So I'm just going to move on. Daniel has an example he wants to show. And you didn't do this example, but you just want to talk through what it is exactly, right?
Well, it's very simple. It's a basic choose-your-own-adventure. It was done for a very low budget by these guys, Chad, Matt, and Rob. Done very well for a small budget, and it's they did another one called The Time Machine, which had over 1 million views, and this has got over 500,000. And just an example of good, cheap interactive storytelling.
One of the things that's I think is really interesting is the interactive framework for this is YouTube, and it's essentially using the interactive choice points that you can create within video. So what happens is that as the first video ends its time, which is about 2 minutes long, you're left with a choice, and you have 3 choices. So it's not right or wrong. It's which path are you going to take, and as you click the next level of this, whatever you want to do. It's justice, helper, or ignore it. In this case, what's happened is these guys are shooting a film, and they hear a woman screaming, and they have to decide whether to help her or not to help her. And when you click that link, it leads you to another video within YouTube, which then at the end of that video has more links in it. So it creates this web effect or branching tree that allows the narrative to roll on and roll on. And you can actually see more of those videos on the right-hand side. I have the videos to play. I'm not sure we'll have time. I might come back to them at the end. But what I wanted to sort of get into was a little bit of a discussion about sort of how we feel these stories are actually working right now. What do you think is working about them? What do you think is the main barrier that we all have to overcome in creating these stories? Mike, do you want to?
Oh. I have some problems with interactive storytelling as it exists right now. I'm not sure that there are, having experimented with it quite a bit, I'm not sure that there are sustainable models yet that can engage users at a mass level for extended periods of time that are interesting and that are relevant to a larger audience, with the exception, of course, of things like Castaway, which I think obviously are germane and relevant to a large group of people, although a substantially smaller group of people than those watching the television show, which is quite interesting to me.
The old lean back, lean forward thing.
Yeah. And you know, I think that though that there are genres that do it particularly well, although if they are interactive story models, they don't ultimately change the ending. I think documentary does it extraordinarily well. I mean, if you take a look at some of the stuff on POV, if you take a look at some of the stuff that Brian Storm is doing at mediastorm.org in the US, a lot of the stuff that PBS has done, I think that there's a great amount of content out there that's interactive content around very specific documentary properties. I mean, I have a good friend who is a developer at Microsoft and was probably one of the earliest interactive storytellers, did a number of CD-ROMs when he was at Corbis, and tends to do a lot right now. He just released something called Worldwide Telescope a couple of months ago with Microsoft, and his model has always been engagement, context, and reference. Those are the things that connected environments do particularly well. And that's one of the things that documentary does particularly well. It can engage you, it can provide further context to a story, and then it can drive you to reference layers. I'm not sure that in narrative that we're at the point yet where we understand what that model is and how that model works. And then the reality is we can't get anyone to bang the paper on this, right? There is no way to produce this without.
I think one of the most interesting elements of what we've been talking about is how do you define success? What does success look like? Whether it's from an audience perspective or a return on investment or a funding perspective. I mean, how?
Yeah, and I've got, my feelings on it, which is that for me, there's the story that is the thing that the author is telling, but then there's also the story about how the audience got the story, and those two are sort of separate. And I would unpack the idea of Castaway, which is that Castaway has two stories. One is the story on the island, and then the story that the audience has. And for some people, that is, I sat on the couch and I watched it. There's other people who say, I got to decide what to punish them with, and so I got involved in that story. And then all the way down, there's this much deeper level where people, their personal story is that I learned more than anybody else about this story, and I understand it better than the person who sat on the couch. And so none of that really affects the story of Castaway, but it's really affecting the way that the people, the experience, and the experience becomes the story for them. And so we were talking about ROI, and what I would say is that the ROI is differently measured because the people who are sitting for the hour on the couch can't be compared in the same way as the ROI of the people who have spent the 10 hours finding the things that have become their own internal story. So that's where it's a different value measurement for me.
I mean, I think one of the things that makes that a difficult example for many other broadcasters. So the BBC doesn't necessarily have to take advertising revenue. It doesn't have to gain revenue from its
fully
online
funded
portals.
by the British licence fee payer.
Right. But I mean, if another broadcaster was to do the same program, in my opinion, they would want to see increased viewership as a result of that interactivity.
Yeah, or the promotional model like ABC does with Lost,
Right.
having an AIG around Lost and having community aspects
Right.
is about promoting the series.
But ultimately, that community needs to be able to be leveraged either to turn and tune into the show, and their advertisers essentially are leveraging that viewership, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what it came down to, is where is the money coming from, right?
Right.
Is that, and gosh, I don't know where to even begin on that, but I guess we've been talking about the two different models, at least when I compare them to our traditional media platforms, are advertisers understand that they need to be in front of their consumers, and they're willing to be beside good quality content. But then there's also the direct-to-consumer model of books and films where, you know, we are a good product and we'd like you to pay up front before you're experiencing it. In some ways those are translating, and in some ways they're not. And I point to video games as being a success for the direct-to-consumer. The advertising supported is still very nascent.
It is working though in some parts of the UK with Bebo, like their original series like Cape Modern, which are fully ad funded.
I mean, if you just use Chad, Matt, and Rob as an example, right? Let's use it anecdotally right now. And it's your example. And I'm not asking for anyone to defend it, but let's say we have 522,136 views of this particular movie. My assumption is that it's episodic, or that your choice points are driving you to a separate movie, right?
Correct, those are
Exactly.
the ones of them, right.
So take a look at the number of views for the additional movies. 62,000 people.
Right.
So the conversion rate from 522 to 62.
No, that's
But you obviously you aggregate it, of course, across, because
one of the things, because I was actually looking at that, is that so in the next three videos you get that 522,000 people splitting almost evenly.
right,
But then as you get to more and more videos, you get more drop off.
right.
Sure.
Right. Well, it's the same. I mean, who gets to level 10 in the video game? You know, it's everyone always starts at the beginning.
Right.
It's
Some people.
well, but that's interesting. Like, is that an incomplete story? If there's the drop-off rate, like, you know, if somebody reads the first half of a book, they haven't read the book. Whereas in this interactive storytelling model, do we judge those people as being participants or non-participants? And the metrics of it becomes really complicated. Like the Castaway, you know, if people do one contest and not the next contest, were they participating? And
Sure.
But the reason video games are doing so well is because the budgets are also there to build them. You know, that I'm sure Chad, Matt, and Rob do not have the budget to create a video game to create this thing. So again, it's not comparing apples to apples, because there can be great interactive story ideas that just aren't being funded yet. So what's going to happen first? Is somebody going to put down the amount of money to hire the talent, both actors and writers and all the production costs we know that go into successful series, put those into interactive stories, and then see how they do, you know?
I think there's two issues that maybe we could go into some more depth for everyone. One of them is the premise of this panel: who cares about interactive storytelling? So do people actually want to do it, or are we just doing it because we can?